important considerations are going to be around how do we maintain some of the function of that the riparian area would have on the stream. And one of those considerations is around wind throw. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And how do we ensure that wind throw isn't going to negatively impact the stream? And also the importance of shade, for instance. That's another attribute that we're trying to manage for. And so we reviewed this. So under the what used to be the Forest Practices Code, and now is under the Forest and Range Practices Act since 2004, is that we have this framework that we're working within, where we have riparian management areas that have the reserve zones, which are areas where no harvesting is permitted, and riparian management zones. And the width of each of these, or the combined width under the RMA, is going to depend on the stream class. I think that's the next slide. And so depending on your stream class, so S1 to S4 are your fish-bearing streams, which are defined based on your channel width. These are the default sort of prescribed widths that are recommended and can be followed. For non-fish bearing streams, you'll notice that there is no riparian reserve zone that is required. But again, we discussed how we could have variances on this. And so I will touch on that in a little bit. I can hear my youngest son screaming in the background. It's kind of distracting.
Helen, I have a quick question.
Yes.
I remember one of the notes saying that within a municipal watershed area, all streams are treated as fish-bearing, even if they're not.
So you're right, correct, that's right. So
are they referred, if even though it's an S6 potentially, are they still referred as an S4 within a municipal area, or is it an S6?
That is a good question, Jen. So just to reiterate, you called it a municipal watershed. I think that, what is the correct name for it? Jason, do you remember?
Yeah. So you're basically dealing with a community watershed.
Community watershed, yeah.
It'll get labeled as an S4, not an S6, and that's in part because an S4, the criteria for the size is actually the same as an S6. It's just the fact that it's deemed fish-bearing or not, or within a community watershed.
Does that address your question, Jen?
It does. Would that be regardless of slope? Like, does it matter?
Yes, regardless of slope.
Okay, cool. Yep. Thank you.
So within the regulation, so this is the Forest and Range Practices Regulation, which is within the Forest and Range Practices Act, is that this is where it defines what is a fish stream. And one of those definitions of a fish stream is a slope gradient less than 20%, unless it does not, unless it actually has fish in it. So 20% is sort of this gradient cutoff, but in scenarios where you're like, I'm not sure, this could have fish in it. I mean, sometimes it's around looking at how streams are connected, and that there's these sort of like little, there's an example at the woodlot where there's an area that's 20%, but then there's this like other tributary that feeds into the stream that allows fish to migrate up to the stream reach that is above the 20% slope. And for that reason, we had to assign it as a fish-bearing stream. And so whenever in doubt, it's important to bring out other professionals, to call on a biologist to get them to sign off on these kind of decisions, or to be more conservative and to take that approach, especially in areas that have very high value fisheries habitat, or a lot of stakeholders are engaged in and have concerns. There's all sorts of things that, require scenarios that may require us to be more conservative with our approaches. And here I talked about the community watershed, and also about this notion of a non-classified drainage. So those are water features that are less than 100 meters in length and have no presence of continuous alluvium or no definable banks. And I have a question later in for you guys to work through that has to do with non-classified drainages. So those are over and above the S1, S2, S3 to S6. Those are when you can't classify it as one of those. What is it? And part of it is that